Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about a legacy deck. That's right, I just came up with a legacy deck. Oh, I'm such a genius. Oh, I'm such a genius. This is amazing. I am so smart. I came up with this deck all on my own with no help from anyone else because I'm really, really smart. So this is an interesting deck, and I was like, oh boy, I got to make a thingy about it. I've been working on it the last couple days. And yeah, so let's get right into it. Okay, so where I came up with this deck was not entirely of my own design. There was a vintage deck that won the Power 9 series in Chicago in 2007. And I was like, wow, this deck is sweet. I've remembered it the entire time since then, right? And I was like, oh man, this is so cool. This is such an interesting concept. Like, this is a great idea. And so I took a lot of elements from that deck. Obviously, of course, like we can't port it over 1-to-1. There's some ban cards, quite a few ban cards, and things like that. But there's still the base idea itself is still pretty good. And in fact, even better since, of course, we've gotten even better cards to hate them out. Right? We want to hate them out. This deck is a hate deck, and it's targeted about hating people out. I mean, that's the point. Instead of like having like a particular game plan it wants to interact, it kind of just wants to just play these cards that screw people over, right? Um, so yeah, this is in some respects it is a meta deck, right? So like for example, it'd be pretty easy to adapt it to your local metagame because people typically don't change up things too much or really can't change things up too much. Like, what do you think? Is Magus of the Moon never not going to be good against like Cloud Post and lands and things like that, depths or whatever? No, probably not. It's probably always going to be good, right? So, yeah, good stuff there. So what we're looking at is we really want to hit out sort of the best decks at the moment. So we have Delver, right? Blue-red Delver, sometimes with or without basics, depending. Death and Taxes, typically the Yorian variants, but like any other variant, like the 60 card variant, same thing. Uro decks, so basically the Bant Uro or 4-color Uro or whatever. The Uro control deck piles, right? Or Miracles, a lot of this same stuff will work there. And then, of course, there's a lot of cards trying to deal with the combo decks. I mean, it sort of just depends. There's all sorts of things to deal with the combo decks. So, yeah, just depends. Just depends. And of course, there's other stuff that we wanna deal with too. We'll try to address. So, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that is built around a lot of things. And of course, obviously, Elvish Reclaimer being a big part of it, not only just as a good way to tutor up lands, but as well as just being a great beater. Once you've stone rained them about 10 times. All right, so here is the original deck that I was looking at from the Vintage Championship, or excuse me, the finals of the 2007 SCG tournament. You know, a lot of it looks a little strange, right? Like 10 Street Hooligan, main deck Sting Scourger. I mean, Sky Shroud Elite. This might have been the last time Sky Shroud Elite made an appearance. I mean, obviously it's a 1-mana 2/3, when they have non-basics, but yeah. So, and of course, notably, this deck also has Skull Clamp, which makes it a little bit better in fair matchups. And of course, Tarmogoyf, that was a big inclusion, because at this time, Tarmogoyf was still very new, had just been released, and was obviously very good. So yeah, that's probably why we see something like Seal of Fire to pump Tarmogoyf, so that's pretty sweet. But yeah, this sort of basic idea of like playing a bunch of cards like Magus of the Moon and such, or Pyrostatic Pillar in the sideboard, Aether Vial, right? Because at this time, mana drain decks were still very good, so Aether Vial is quite good against the mana drain decks. You don't have to worry about your stuff getting countered. So yeah, so this is really where the basic gestalt of this idea came from. Except for some bullshit reason, someone else kind of came up with sort of the same idea I did a couple days ago. So this happened in one of the most recent challenges. I think this was Sunday, the Sunday Legacy Challenge. Although this isn't quite the same. There's some differences, right? But yeah, obviously, it's gonna make me look like kind of dumb. I guess this is just sort of one of those issues or situations where there's synchronicity. So yeah, that's them's the breaks, right? The first one that comes out with it is gets the credit. But although this deck it only bears a little resemblance to what I'm trying to do. But yeah, the Elvish Reclaimer Ragavan sort of core of the deck is present, but that's okay. That's okay. No big deal. No big deal. It's something I just wanted to bring up just because it just uh, annoyed me a little bit that I was like I can't unveil this really sweet deck that has no sort of precedent, right? But that's okay. No biggie. I'm still a genius, and this guy was probably cheating, right? He probably hacked into my brain. He's like Hacker Man, right? So there you go. All right. So here we go. We got some good stuff. This first thing that should pop out to you is this has a ton of one-of creatures. And why is that? Well, because we want to be a Green Sun's Zenith sort of deck, right? So we got a lot of one-ofs, a lot of stuff we want to tutor out, so that's pretty sweet. That's good stuff. So we got Green Sun Zenith, and then we also have Once Upon a Time, of course, as free spell, and then just filtering later on in the game, which can get our non-green cards as well as like our lands too, of course. And Sylvan Library. This deck loves Sylvan Library, loves to just take hits off library. And we have things like, for example, Umezawa's Jite. This will probably stand out to some people, but Jite, of course, can give you a bunch of life, so that's an extra free card of no cost off of Sylvan Library. That's great. Um, and I mean, Jite just sort of does everything. It's a great card just to put on any creature. Obviously, there's again some anti-synergy with Collector Oof, but typically the decks that Oof is good against, if you have Oof in play, their deck doesn't function. So it doesn't matter if you draw a blank Jite because they're probably not going to win. And of course, you can just easily side out Jite, but it's so powerful in the creature matches. Anything with wants to play to the board, Jite is awesome. So yeah, I like Jite a lot. I think you could even play like a third copy. That's pretty sweet. But yeah, Jite is very good. I mean, it's not just removal; it's also life gain. It's also pump. Good stuff. Just does everything really. And of course, we have removal, lightning bolt, chain lightning. Of course, I kind of want to play more chain lightnings, but that's okay. No big deal. And of course, the basis of the deck really is Rag, Reclaimer. It's just powerful, really powerful one drops that need to be answered. Things like Noble Hierarch sort of bring things together. It's a very good card, pumps things, produces all your colors of mana, really great stuff. And then of course we have all the tutor targets: Collector Roof, Masked Vandal, Scavenging Ooze, Endurance, Excavator, Clothis, Shifting Ceratops. Yeah. Obviously you can't tutor for Goblin Sharpshooter with Green Sun Zenith, but Sharpshooter is just so unbelievably good against things like Death and Taxes. It's just it's so good. It's so good, and obviously it's really insane against elves. Um, you know, Obviously also if you expected to play against elves, some number of Pyrokinesis or Fury would be a good card to play as well. But yeah, and then of course in the lands slot is basically primarily like a wasteland sort of deck, but also Rishadan Port. Port can be fetched with Reclaimer. It cuts off mana. This is just awesome. Um, of course, one of those like nurturing peatland are things you can tutor up with Reclaimer, as well as things that you can replay with Raymond Excavator. So that's quite good. Some basics, Taigas, of course, fetch lands, all that good stuff. You want a bunch of fetches for to pump up your Reclaimer. Um, and then the sideboard, which we'll talk a little bit about. But yeah, that's basically it. Although we have shifting Ceratops in here, the people might be like, oh, well, why don't you play Questing Beast? I mean, Questing Beast is good. Like, that's not a bad card, of course. It's very good against lands, so I could certainly see playing it. But Shifting Ceratops is just much, much better versus Delver, especially if you're trying to get the last few points in against a Murktide Regent, and then just burning them out or something or whatever. Yeah. Shifting Ceratops is very good. Not being able to be blocked by Regent, being able to block Regent, right, if you pay the mana, or Delver. Also makes it a good holder of Jite. Can't be Brazen Borrowered. Really good stuff here. Really good stuff. All right. And the really, really good cards that make this deck are basically all right here. You'll probably notice something that these are all fire cards, baby. That's right, fire. That's the best design philosophy ever. Ragavan needs no introduction. This card is extremely good against things like, well, all the combo decks. Think about it, it's kind of like a Goblin Lackey with a much lower ceiling, but it's still very good because it produces mana and lets you play cards, say like cantrips or something from your opponent's hand, or play things like Thoughtseize or whatever. Extremely good, extremely powerful. I mean, that can be absolutely game-winning and back-breaking combined with all of your other sort of disruption. So yeah, Monkey, not only is it just a 1-mana 2/1, but it also creates a Lotus Petal. It also gives you card advantage, and that's great. Then of course we have Endurance. Endurance is great against things like Doomsday. Really good against Doomsday. Obviously very good against a lot of the graveyard decks. So that's pretty sweet. Great against Delver. Great against a lot of different decks that, I mean, obviously it's a bit telegraphed, right? Keeping up 2 green in a colorless, it's like, oh, what's he got in his hand? He didn't play anything last turn. But the card is still very, very good. Having Flash is awesome. I mean, what a sweet card. What a sweet card. I love Endurance. Just it really helps in a lot of the really tougher combo matches. Ignoble Hierarch. This card is sweet. I mean, it's 1-mana 0/1. It's Noble Hierarch that adds Jund colors, right? So there you go. What more do you want? Base red-green deck, great mana excel, good stuff. And of course we have Klothys, which is probably one of the most sticky threats in the game. It's indestructible. It's not even a creature half the time. It gains you life, so this is good against, Delver with all their burn and stuff. Good with Sylvan Library. And it's a persistent source of damage. It can add you mana. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's just I mean, it does everything. It's great. It can be an attacker, right, on some board states. Um, Klothys is very sweet, very sticky. A little worse now because of Prismatic Ending, but still a very difficult to deal with threat. So these cards kind of really make the deck and give it a lot of power. All right, so these are cards that I would pretty much always play in every sideboard because they would be the decks that they're good against, I'd imagine, would always be there, right? So we have Sulfur Elemental. Again, this is very obviously an anti-death and taxes card. It works extremely well with something like, say, Once Upon a Time, of course, because it'd be fetched with Once Upon a Time, of course. I know that's a, mind-bending synergy, oh boy, but also Goblin Sharpshooter, because it can basically kill any X2 in their deck at that point. Obviously, Double Sulfur Elemental is very powerful too. So it'll just kill everything before they can even respond, which is pretty sweet. Then, of course, we have Magus of the Moon. This card is, like I said, good against all the super non-basic heavy decks. Really, really powerful. I could even see playing more. Again, a lot of these things depend on, like, what is your local metagame like, or what is good on Magic Online at the moment, although you can get a lot of random stuff. And then, of course, we have Red Elemental Blast. Blue is the best color in Legacy, so and Delver is or blue decks of some stripe are typically the best decks. So Red Elemental Blast is always good, or of course also Pyroblast. You should probably switch those up. So some mix of them, 2 and 2 or something. But Reb and Pyro answer all sorts of problematic things like Delver, or Uro, or Murktide Regent, right? Things like that. Sometimes even non-creature permanents like Court of Cunning, right? That's the Monarch giving a 1, and all sorts of random stuff. So yeah, Reb is great. You can hit cantrips and things occasionally, like a Brainstorm, depending on the situation. Very flexible, very, very good. Absolutely just, I mean, these cards are just great. I mean, extremely powerful and very, very good. So yeah, I probably wouldn't leave home without these. All right, so why play red, right? Like, why would you play this over something like Maverick, right? Which even gets to play something like Knight of the Reliquary. Well, mostly because we have things like I just mentioned, we have Sharpshooter, Medulla Blast in the sideboard, Magus, which could be main decked or sideboard, Burn, of course, which we have, 4 bolts, 2 chains, and Monkey, right? We have Monkey. Monkey is puts a ton of pressure. Any suboptimal hands by your opponent, they can really get taken apart by Monkey. Especially like, yeah, oh, it's just so good. It's just so good. Red offers a lot. It offers a lot. So, instead of like, oh, like, why would you play this? You don't get Thalia, you don't get Mom, you don't get Knight. Well, we have a bunch of other really powerful stuff, especially things like Sharpshooter and Magus and Sulfur Elemental are so good against the white decks and creature decks and things like that. Like, again, or of course, even stuff like Pyrokinesis or whatever. Uh, or things of that nature. All this direct damage stuff is very good against things like elves too, so that's something to keep in mind. But like I said earlier, there's a ton of options. Again, just going over some of them, I even thought about main decking Thorn of Amethyst. I mean, oh my gosh, like what a sweet card. Thorn of Amethyst, like I mentioned earlier, Questing Beast, Hex Drinker, Veil of Summer, Scrib Ranger, Mindbreak Trap, Chalice of the Void, Torpor Orb, of course, against things mostly just Doomsday, but of course can be good against things like Death and Taxes as well. Pithing Needle, Vexing Shusher. Vexing Shusher seems a little narrow, but I mean, getting your hate cards to resolve is that's pretty good. Things like Choke or Carpet of Flowers. I mean, these are extremely powerful cards. Extremely powerful, right? But for the most part, this deck is basically powered by Modern Horizons 2, right? That is what really gives it the oomph, really gives it a lot of good stuff. Obviously, Elvish Reclaimers from M20, I believe, but yeah, a lot of good stuff here. A lot of good stuff here. Um, Things like Ramanap Excavator to crucible your lands back are really powerful too. And there could even be a small black splash. I mean, we're already playing Nurturing Peatland, as well as 4 Elvish Reclaimer, as well as some number of Noble Hierarchs, 3 to 4. So, like a small black splash for things like Duress or Thoughtseize or whatever, things like that. Or maybe even like a Hate Bear or something, maybe like Plague Bringer, right? That's the 2 mana 1/1 zombie that you can pay like XX and a colorless to destroy a creature, I believe. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff you can play with, but a small black splash seems pretty easy. Might be something worth looking into. But for the most part, I think it's just better for your mana consistency. Just go red green. And of course, unfortunately, the deck can sometimes struggle against random decks. Uh, Decks that aren't on your radar, random brews and things like that. But this is, of course, mitigated a lot in your local metagame, where you're able to very clearly just change between, people can't change between different decks as easily. Most people don't have huge collections. And again, most people tend to just play one kind of deck just because it's Legacy is a very difficult format to play. There's a lot of different intricacies in each matchup, and it takes sometimes like hundreds of matchups, games before you can really get a feel for what you should be doing all the time in every matchup. So yeah, but typically in a metagame where you know what's going on, you know what you're gonna face, yeah, you can easily uh, change up the deck to fit everything. And the only thing I wouldn't change is like some of the mana base, Wastelands, Reclaimers, Monkeys, Bolts, Sylvan Libraries, Green Suns, stuff like that. But yeah, so pretty sweet. But yeah, that's it. That's it all. That's all we got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. There's so much you can do with this deck. I was really excited. Couldn't even get to sleep that night, and I came up with it. And I started making the deck list on my phone, started adding cards and stuff. That was super sweet. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do, a lot of stuff going on. Had a great time, making this deck because there's so much cool stuff you can do, and you can really change it up to attack the metagame. So yeah, it's great. It's great. I love it. And it's really sweet. So yeah, but that's basically it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you liked a look at this really sweet legacy deck. I hope when tournaments and stuff start up again in my area, I'll be able to play this thing because I got all the cards for it. So that's sweet. And just hate on people. Just hate on them. What's the best thing about Legacy? All the ridiculous, absurd hate cards. Like, how is Pyroblast a card? Like, how is Dread of Night a card, right? Like, I mean, Carpet of Flowers, like Massacre. I mean, it's even stuff like Armageddon. Like, how is this real? Cataclysm. Gosh, these cards are brutal, brutal. But I love it. I love it. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun making this deck and looking through stuff. So, a lot going on here, but that's it for today. So, thanks for stopping by, guys. Hope you enjoyed and have a great day.